You know what? You can have a donut just for saying that. That's what happens. That's what happens when you give me a compliment. What? I bought those donuts. I can give them out to whoever I want. It's true. It's true. I actually used church money, so Jesus did buy the donuts. That's actually true.
So when I was a junior in high school, I had my first real date with Elise. Like the real date. So, yeah. Like the kind of date where you take her out to dinner and a movie and then you drop her off at her house kind of date. And it was our first one. Up to that point, there was like lunch things during school, but this was the real one. And so I was so just overwhelmed in love with this girl that I was willing to just disregard all the rules to spend as much time with her as possible. So that first night, my very first date, I went over curfew by 2 hours. 2 hours. The kind of over curfew that when I got home, everybody was asleep kind of over curfew. So now clearly, I'm not thinking clearly, as evidence that I just completely blew past the 2-hour curfew. But the next evidence, and some of y'all, you've heard this story before, the next evidence is that if you're going to show up late to your house, you should try to get in your house as quiet as possible. So logically, I should have just parked the car outside and then slowly got into the house and then went downstairs. But because I'm just so in love at this moment, I decide to use the garage, which is right under my parents' room. So I like hit the garage door, and like drive in to the garage, which is again under their room, get to my room thinking, man, this is free and clear. Had the best night of my life and I'm not going to get in trouble for it. And then I hear it, my mom say my name, and she's waiting at the top of the steps for me because I, at that point, was downstairs. And so now I have to face my mom and deal with this. Now, thankfully, I learned a lesson very on in my teenage years that would come to my aid in this moment, because this is the critical lesson right here. This is actually horrible advice that I'm about to give you. This is horrible, awful advice. But I'm a parent. I've got my kids in this room, so maybe it's a justification to give this advice. I don't know. But your success as a teenager is to figure out which parent you can get away with the most kind of stuff. That is the secret. Now listen. If you have not figured that out, you are behind, all right? You are way behind. And if you are in an unfortunate situation where you can get nothing past both of your parents because they're both just tough, then I am so sorry that is your living situation, all right? So how many of you would raise your hand and say, I know exactly what parent is going to let me get away with the most? Who knows? Raise your hand if you know. Nice, nice. Amelia, you know? Oh. Who is it? Are you not going to say? That's a good call. That's a good call. I don't know. Part of it wants to be me. I want to be that parent, but they're like, I don't want to be that parent. So I don't know how to feel about that. All right, how many of you would raise your hand and say, unfortunately, both of my parents are tough. I can't get away with anything. Anybody living in that world? Oh, man, this is tough. This is Gwen. Yeah, that may be more about you, Gwen, than it is about me. I don't know. So for me, it's my mom. It's always been my mom. My mom is the one person, I'm really close to my mom, and I can get out of any kind of trouble with my mom. Even to this day, I can get out of trouble with my mom. Here's just a current situation that's happening right now in my family's life. My sister's 10 years younger than me. She's 27. Okay, we're both adults. We both have children. Like, we are fully functioning human beings. Just recently, my grandfather and my grandma were in a little bit of a health situation, and we had this thing coming up for like a family thing to come see them. And my mom reached out to both of us and was like, I expect both of you to be there. Like, I'm like, Mom, yeah, I'm 37. You can't talk to me like that, but whatever, okay? I expect both of you to be there. Well, I said, I'm not going to do that. That's not happening. And my sister's like, I'm not going to do it either. Guess who got yelled at? My sister. Not me. My mom was like, you know what? You can do anything you want, Adam. Just take it easy. You live a hard life, all right? Yeah, so it's just like, it's still there. It's still there. I still got it. 37, I still got it. So my mom, I could go by anything with my mom. So my mom, she's waiting for me at the top of the steps. She's like, you're 2 hours late. I thought you were dead. And because like this was a time before cell phones. So I actually could have been dead. I mean, that could have been a real thing. And so then I get there and she's like, you are grounded forever. You're never going to see this girl again. Like this is the worst. And then by the end of that conversation, I kid you not, my mom was crying, hugging me, telling me, oh, you're such a great son. You're the best son in the world. Not only did I not get in trouble, I got my mom to actually, like, we had like a moment, and now she talks about it. She goes, remember that moment, your first night, your first date? We had that great moment on the top of the stairs? Yes. The moment I was 2 hours late. Yeah, my sister may or may not hate me. That may or may not be an actual thing in my life. Now, here's the thing. At the heart of this entire story are two issues that every single one of us deal with, all right? Two issues that we all deal with, all right? Issue number one is this. We are always trying to figure out what is okay with who matters most. We're all trying to figure out what is okay with who matters most in our life. Because here's the truth. Regardless of how dependent you are on people or how independent you think you are, someone needs to be okay with what you're doing with your life. Somebody needs to be okay with what you're doing in your life. Now, listen, I will have people that I've met over the years and be like, listen, I don't need to prove anything to anybody. I'm my own person. I'm independent. I'm powerful. I can do all things to myself. But I promise you, even that person who thinks I don't have to prove anything to anybody is proving something to somebody. We all have somebody that we're trying to prove something to, and deep down, we want to make sure things are okay with that person. Which brings me to the second thing. The second thing is that we are always trying to figure out what we can get away with. So it's not just who's the most important person in my life because I need to know what matters to them. But then once I figure out who that person is, now what can I get away with? How far is too far? How much can I do and still be okay? So, what is truth? What is true in this situation when it comes to what matters most? Well, it depends. It depends because we need to ask this question, and this is really important. I need you to think about this. Whose opinion matters most to you right now in your life? Think about that. It doesn't have to be a parent. For most of you, it probably isn't your parents. But there is somebody whose opinion matters to you, and you make decisions based off of what they think. Who has authority over your life right now? Now, regardless of whether you think of this or not, it actually is your parents. It's a legal thing, all right? Like there, until you become old enough to make your own legal decisions, your parents have authority over your life, but maybe they don't have authority over your life. Whose words and actions determine your value? And finally, we said this a couple weeks ago, who is living rent-free inside your head? Who gets to live rent-free inside your head? Who is the person that matters most and you're basing all your decisions off what they think? Because the truth is this, your truth, the truth you live your life by, the truth that you make decisions by, your truth becomes relative to who matters most in your life. That is what truth is. I wish I could tell you that truth is just truth, but that's not the case because I could tell you something that is actually very true. But you don't care what truth is coming out of my mouth. What truth is to you is dependent upon the people that you think matter most in your life. It's their opinions. It's what they think when they think about you. And so we've been spending these last several weeks talking about temptation. And a real simple definition of temptation is when you want to do something, you have a strong desire to do something. Now, most of the time we talk about temptation, we talk about bad things, which is almost always true. Temptation is usually linked to bad things. But temptation is not always bad. Temptation is just a strong desire to do something. So by this definition, this is where temptation gets really confusing, right? Temptation gets really confusing because we need to ask ourselves, who's determining what is good and what is bad in my life? You need to know that answer. Who is determining what is good and what is bad in your life? Somebody is determining that. And whoever that is that's determining what's good and bad, that is going to direct the decisions that you are going to make over the next several years. It's going to have a profound impact on your life. Because we've got truth, and we can say truth is truth, but the reality is truth is relative to who matters most in your life. Who's determining your truth? And what do we do when what I feel and know to be true doesn't match on what I believe is actually happening in my life? This is the problem with temptation. I feel like I want to do this thing because something is driving me. Somebody is driving me to do it, but even though that's what I want to do, I don't feel like it's the right thing to do. So how do I deal with that tension? And so a lot of times we compensate the tension and we make decisions based on what we think someone will or will not do to us. That's why the people that get to make those decisions for you have so much power. That's why whoever matters most to you, they have the power. They're determining your truth because you will make decisions almost all the time, not because of what is actually right and actually wrong. You will most likely make decisions based upon what someone will or will not do to you. Think about that. Now, it sounds crazy when I say it out loud. You might even hear me say it and think, that sounds crazy. Am I really that out of control of my life? Most of us, the answer is yes. And if you don't think that's true about you, man, I promise you think this is probably true about a bunch of your friends. You've got friends who are making some decisions that are really bad because they've allowed somebody into their life to determine their value, to determine those decisions, and to determine those directions. It's a lot easier for us to look at other people and see this and go, yeah, that's completely true for them, but I don't know if it's completely true for me. Chances are it is true for you. Chances are somebody right here tonight, you are making decisions that are not good for you because you've allowed somebody to determine the truth in your life. Now, the person that we do this to the most and the easiest person to take out of the equation is God. Now, when it comes to God, we typically like to put God in two boxes. And here's the two boxes. We either think that he is a God who gets his or a God who gets it. Now, here's what I mean by this. A lot of times when it comes to temptation, the biggest confusion we have is, what is God going to think about this? If I do this thing, is he the kind of God who gets his? Meaning that if I make a mistake, if I do something wrong, how angry is God going to get at me? Like, is it the kind of angry where he doesn't listen to my prayers? Or is it the kind of angry where he strikes me dead with lightning? And I don't know if you actually think that is a true thing or not. I've never actually known anybody who has died that way. I don't believe that is a real thing that happens. But when you talk to people, listen, people got some crazy ideas about the way that God deals with his business. And a lot of people actually think that way. They think that God is an angry God and you better not make mistakes. And if you do, man, God is going to get his and it's going to be bad. Or we flip it to the other extreme and we say, God's not angry. Man, God doesn't care about anything. God gets it. He gets what you want to do with your life. He gets the struggles of temptations. You know what? Just do whatever you want. God's okay with it. Both of those perceptions are completely false. And we need to get the right perception about God because what matters most, who matters most, determines the truth in your life. And so what we know about God is a lot, and we don't got a lot of time to talk about it. So I'm just going to pull up this from 1 John chapter 4, we know that God is love. It says, for God is love. The light of God's love shined within us when he sent his matchless Son into the world so that we might live through him. This is love. He loved us long before we loved him. It was his love, not ours. He proved it by sending his Son to be the pleasing sacrifice, offering to take away our sins. God is love. Now, when we say that, that is a very confusing term because the word love means different things to different people in this room. For some of you, when you hear the word love, like it makes you think of happy things. It makes you think of safe things. It makes you feel of lovely things. But some of y'all, when you hear the word love, it's connected to a lot of brokenness and a lot of pain. You have experienced people using you and abusing you in the name of love. So I get the fact that when we say something that God is love, that can create a lot of confusion in the room if you don't know who God is. So without getting into this deep dive discussion about what love is, because it is a deep conversation, I just want to say this about love. Love is not some game that we play, which is super unfortunate. And I think that's the reason why the word love is so jacked up, because love has become this game that we play with each other. It's this word that we use to get what we want out of people. Love is not a game that we play with people. And the reason why a lot of us are so messed up because we've given somebody control of our truth is because somewhere along the line in our life, this word love got jacked up and it messed us up. Maybe it was from a friend in a situation that happened. Maybe it was from somebody in your family. Maybe it was in a relationship that you were in. Somewhere you heard the word love and it was a beautiful thing, and then it became a broken thing. And so temptation at its core is playing games with who matters most. That's what temptation is, because here's the truth. There are people that you think that matter the most, and there are people that really do matter the most. Now, sometimes they align. Sometimes who you think matters the most and who actually matters the most are the same person. But most of the time, for most of us, they're separate. And when you get tempted to do something that you know is wrong, but you choose it, you're playing games with people that really care about you. And here's some really good examples. Good examples, your parents. Listen, I don't know every single person's situation and relationship with your mom and dad. I get some of y'all, like you've got some relationships that are unhealthy and are a little jacked up with your parents, and I completely get that and understand that. But some of you guys, listen, despite how hard your parents are on you, and despite sometimes how it feels like they don't care, I know they care. And they're fighting for you, and they love you, and they want what's best for you. And you get into a situation where you are tempted to do something that you know is wrong, and by choosing to do it, you're playing games with your parents' heart. And we definitely do this in our relationships when we start dating people and the relationship starts to go beyond the physical parameters that it needs to go beyond. And there's these decisions that we make. How far are we going to go with the person that we're dating? And temptation sets in, as it always does in every relationship. It's like gravity telling us to go further than what we know is okay. And when we play with temptation, we're actually hurting the people that matter the most, which are the people that we're dating. Like if you really cared for the people that you date, like really, truly cared about them, then you would choose to be pure in your relationship. You wouldn't do anything to jack that up. And anytime you're in a situation with your friends and you're tempted to be selfish, tempted to be rude, tempted to be all about you and not about helping them, anytime you choose that, you are hurting what matters most, and that's them. That's what temptation is. It's playing games with who matters most. Because when you really love somebody, you don't play games with them. You never play games with them. Because love is a sacred, powerful, very real thing. So there's this moment in the New Testament where Jesus is actually being tempted. He went through temptation too. And he's on this like 40-day fast in the desert. And he is tired and he is hungry and he is open to make a mistake. Because that's what happens when you get tired and you get hungry. Listen, some of y'all keep making bad decisions is probably because you need a snack and a nap, all right? Like seriously, like you think I'm joking. Like seriously, you should stop talking to people on your phone, stop replying back to things, go take a nap, all right? Get something to eat. Because when you're hangry and you're tired, you're going to make bad decisions. And so Jesus is in this position because he's fasting where he could make a bad decision. And actually, in that moment, like it's like one of those movie moments, good versus evil. Satan actually shows up in the desert and tempts Jesus to do something that is out of his character. And we pick up the moment in chapter 4, verse 5. It says, the accuser, which is Satan, transported Jesus to the holy city of Jerusalem. So it's like this weird movie scene where he's taking him in front of the entire city of Jerusalem. And he perched him at the highest point of the temple. And he said to him, If you are really God's son, jump and the angels will catch you. For it is written in the scriptures, he will command his angels to protect you and they will lift you up so that you won't even bruise your feet on a rock. So Jesus is hungry. He's been out in the desert for 40 days without eating. This is like, I wish I could get a little bit more into it, but it's a part of his process to doing ministry. And he's being tempted. He's being challenged. His truth is being questioned. Satan says, if you're really God's son, see, this was Jesus' truth. His truth, and he will spend 3 years of ministry telling people about this truth. He will die because of this truth. His truth is he is God's son. That is his truth. God was the someone who mattered to him the most. And this is what temptation does. Temptation attacks your truth. Now, here's the thing you need to know about truth. Not everybody's truth is real. Some of y'all, you've got this truth that you live by, and it's fake truth. And you know how we find out if your truth is real or not? It's through temptation. Because temptation exposes your truth. When you are tempted to go beyond what you know you're supposed to do, it's going to expose some truth in you. Now, listen. We could talk about this all night. Like, there are lots of people in this room that have stories of a relationship you thought was real, a love you thought was real, a friendship you thought was real, a thing that only you did and nobody knew about, and you thought it was okay, only to give in to temptation, to give in to do that thing and come on the other side of it and realize that wasn't what you thought it was. And in the end, it left you hurting, and it left you broken, it left you empty. Temptation exposes truth. And so for Jesus, it's interesting because he's in this moment and Satan is tempting him. He's calling out his truth. He's saying, if you're really God's son, jump off this temple and won't God save you? Now, here's the thing that's crazy about real truth. Real truth doesn't have to prove anything to anybody. See, Jesus had such a special relationship with God because God was his father. In that moment, he didn't have to prove anything to Satan. He didn't have to go along with this temptation to try to see whether or not this thing was actually real. He knew it was real, and because he knew it was real, because he knew this thing was true, he wasn't going to do anything that would cause him to play games with God. That's how much the relationship Jesus had with God was so important. He knew it was real, and he wasn't going to play games with it. And I think the reason why a lot of us get in some really messed up relationships and messed up situations is because we know what we're in is not good for us. And there's this weird thing we do when we're tempted to do what's wrong. It's like we're testing whether or not this bad thing is actually bad. How crazy is that? You know it's not good for you. You know that relationship you're in is not good. You know those things that you're doing when nobody is looking is not good for you. You know it's not good, and you're tempted to keep doing it. You go, well, let's just see where this thing goes. Let's just keep pushing further into the darkness and see how I feel when I come out on the other side. It's crazy because you know if it was true, and you know if it was real, and you know if it was healthy, you wouldn't have to deal with temptation. And so Jesus, he's like, I'm not going to jump. I don't need to jump. I don't need to prove anything to you, Satan. I know who I am. I know who my Father is. I'm not going to do it. Because Jesus knew that love is not a game. Love is a choice. And listen, I wish I could just tell you that I'm so sorry for those of you who are in the room and your heart has been hurting because somebody has used love as a game for you. But I know those words aren't going to make anything better. I'm just really sorry that the way you think about things is because of those things. And this is where it gets real dangerous because we love to put God in the same box that everybody else fits in. So just because your dad treated you that way, then maybe that's who God really is. Just because your boyfriend treated you that way, maybe that's who God really is. Just because your best friend treated you that way, maybe that's who God really is. You need to understand something. God is not a reflection of the broken people in your life. God is the perfection of the broken people in your life. He is what we should be, but we're not that because of sin. And what happens is we let broken people break us, and we just assume that's who God is, and that's the furthest from the truth. God is not any of those things. God is love. Now, I don't expect one conversation tonight with me and you to get you there if your heart's really hurting, but we can get there if you're willing to start. Love is not a game. It is a choice. It's choosing to do what is right based off of what is true about God. So I need you to hear this, and I'm going to close this out. God, Jesus, that is the most real truth you are ever going to face ever in your life. And you got to do something with God. Either God is real and he's everything that the scriptures say that he is, or he's not. And you need to figure that out. Because if he's real and he's everything that the scriptures say, and if he's everything that we say every single week, that's important. That's somebody that should be the most important person in my life. If there is a truth I'm going to live by, I should live by that truth. Because if God is everything that God is in the scriptures, that's who I should dedicate my life to. And if he's not, and you don't think that it's real, then you better find something that is. Now again, man, we're not going to answer that question tonight. But if you're here and you're like, man, I want to know a little bit more about that, I want to press in deeper than that, then I just encourage you, keep showing up. Because that's what we're going to keep doing every single week, trying to press in that truth, trying to help you get there. That's why we got small groups, to help you figure those things out. But if God is real, then his truth is the most important truth. And what is true about God should be true about you. I'm going to say that one more time. What is true about God should be true about you. If he matters most, what he's about should be what I'm about. And what he's not about should be what I'm not about. The question you have to stop asking is, how far can I go and be okay? How much can I get away with? How far is too far? How long is too long? What can I do without getting in trouble? You got to stop asking that question, because that question is going to get you burnt every single time. The question you need to ask yourself is, what is true? What is true about God? Because what is true about God should be true about me. If God is a God of love, then I should be about love, but I need to figure out what that is. If God forgives, I need to forgive. If God gives grace, I need to give grace. If God is generous, I need to be generous. What is true about God has to be true about me, because if it's not, I promise you, you're going to be miserable. And you're going to spend your life giving your truth to somebody else who in the end is broken and hurt and struggling and trying to figure things out just like you're trying to figure things out. And if you're not careful, here's what's going to happen. Somebody is going to get better because they used you to get there in the wrong way possible. I'm going to say it again. Somebody is going to get better because they're going to use you to get there in the most wrong way possible. That means they're going to make a lot of mistakes with you. They're going to make some bad decisions, say some stupid things, be very selfish. And then eventually they're going to be like, man, you know what? A couple years ago, I was a jerk and I was an awful person. And that person that I was with, whether it was a friendship or a relationship, I did a lot of bad things to them to discover who I'm not. Man, I'm in a good place now, but wow, what did I do to that person? Man, don't let that be your story. Why not right now choose to say, you know what? I want God to determine my truth. What's real of him has to be real of me. And that's how I'm going to live my life. I'm going to try to give you a next step every week. The next step for you is summer camp, all right? You need to get to summer camp, all right? So summer camp is at Garden City Beach. There's nothing better than Jesus in the beach. We've got a ton of spots left over. I'm telling you, it's super cheap for what you get. $250 gets you there the whole week.